Hey everyone, welcome back to In the Abyss. I'm Rob, and to finish off this week, we are into 1974. On the film side, there are so many great movies that came out in 1974, and I'm going to just go through a lot of them pretty quick to get to what I would say is my favorite for 74. So we're actually going to work backwards today, and I'm going to talk about the music side first, and then we'll get into the film. So on the music side, I'm going with Secret Treaties by Blue Oyster Cult. What's cool about music today is that a lot of these music companies now are releasing their CDs as mini albums. So as you see here, this is kind of a mini album. And if you see behind me, I have these box sets. And a lot of these box sets are the whole catalog of these bands. So a band like Blue Oyster Cult, who I liked, and I had a few of their albums, I was able to get the full box set and get everything they had and really revisit the music over the last several years that I haven't heard in a while. Secret Treaties is a few years before Don't Fear the Reaper. And like I said in earlier episodes, I'm not really a hits guy. Don't Fear the Reaper is a cool song, but it's completely overplayed. And of course, with the Saturday Night Live skit and all of that stuff. So it's one of those songs that if I'm kind of putting a compilation together, probably not going to have Don't Fear the Reaper on there. But with Secret Treaties, what's great about this is you have songs like Career of Evil, Astronomy, Flaming Telepaths, so and then you have ME262, Subhuman, Dominance and Submission. So there's a lot of really good songs on here. It's a good rocker, and it has a good flow, and some of the songs are connected. They flow right into the next song, and I don't always like that, but I think for this album, the songs they do it on have a really good flow to them. And once again, when I'm doing these lists, one of the things I'll do is I'll go back and listen to the album again, maybe the day before, or whatever, a couple days before. So listening to this a few times in the last couple weeks, it becomes a stronger and stronger album. And I would absolutely tell you guys, if you like rock and roll, go listen to Blue Oyster Cult, especially some of the early stuff from the 70s, and start with Secret Treaties. All right, so now I'm going to go into the film. And 1974, there was a lot of options. So I pulled a lot of my movies out to just show you. But a couple that I didn't bring out the show or maybe I don't even have. But Deathwish, starring Charles Bronson. The original Murder on the Orient Express, which of course was redone in 2017 with Johnny Depp. And then a bunch of these. So first one I'm going to show you is The Taking of Pelham 123. This is starring Robert Shaw and Walter Matthau, which of course was redone with Denzel Washington and John Travolta. What's cool about this is the original one is 123, but the remake was 123 with the numbers. So that was how they kind of changed it up. So check this one out. Chinatown with Jack Nicholson. Kind of a film noir. It's not in black and white, but it kind of has that mystery to it where it drags along and you kind of don't know the outcome till you get to the end. It's a really good film. One of my favorites from the early 70s, The Longest Yard, the original. Forget the Sandler crap. I really like some of the early Burt Reynolds movies. He really had that charm and charisma, and he was one of those actors who always just brought himself to the forefront of all of his work. And this is a really fun one, and some great one-liners, and he's really, really good in this. One of my favorite movies as a kid, The Towering Inferno, and you really can't go wrong because you got Steve McQueen and Paul Newman as your headliners, and there was quite a chemistry with them in this film. And for those who really haven't seen this movie, this is basically Titanic in a giant hotel that catches on fire and it traps the people, and it's their grand opening and that kind of thing. But it's during that, because another disaster movie came out in 74, Earthquake, and this was the period of time when you started getting those disaster movies. So this one kind of falls in line with that. Next, I have Blazing Saddles. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but this is basically Mel Brooks' spoof on, westerns. What's real quick funny about this movie is that he gave it to the studio for them to approve, and they thought there were some things he needed to take out that were a little distasteful. So he said, okay, no problem, and he took it and basically put it on the shelf for 6 months, and then said, okay, I made my changes, and they're like, okay, and he released it without making a change. So that's kind of funny. But the reason I'm not going to talk about this one too much is I'm going to follow up with the other Mel Brooks film from 1974, which is Young Frankenstein. Another spoof comedy about the Frankenstein film, and in both movies you have Gene Wilder, in both movies you have Madeline Kahn, now you have Peter Boyle as the monster, and then you have a young Terry Garr as the assistant, and it's just a great chemistry. One of the things that Mel Brooks did really, really well with his spoof comedies, and you don't really see that when they try to do those movies today, is there was a reality to them, right? When he filmed Young Frankenstein, he actually filmed with the real equipment in the real room at Universal that they filmed the original 1931 Frankenstein film with Boris Karloff. Why do you do that? You do that for the realism. You do it for the audience to watch and see that they're watching a monster movie with the comedy around it. And it creates a realism, and it's real to the actors as well. And so what happens is that it's funny because it's real. Whereas I think today when I watch some of these spoof comedies, they're just silly. And they just don't have quite the same realism. They're just corny. So, Mel Brooks was the master at it. And these two, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, are two of his best. The last two I'm going to talk about are actually two Coppola films. And a lot of people don't know that Coppola did this movie that was very successful called The Conversation. A lot of people say it's probably Coppola's best film. It stars Gene Hackman, and he intercepts a conversation about a possible murder, and he's caught in between the decision of how to deal with this. And it's a great mystery drama type film, and it's Coppola at his finest. It's shot well. The acting is off the charts, and it has just such a great flow to it. Another actor in this movie, John Cazale, we talked about with Godfather a couple days ago. John Cazale died of cancer pretty young. He did 5 films. Now, think about this for a minute. He did Godfather, Godfather 2, The Conversation, Deer Hunter, and Dog Day Afternoon. So this guy's 5 films were 5 of the greatest films in film history. It's unreal. And he was such a great supporting actor. And to be able to be in these films is pretty cool. This movie was runner-up to the Academy Award. The winner of the Academy Award in '74 is actually the movie I'm going with, which is number 1, is The Godfather Part Two. Like we said a couple days ago about The Godfather, Godfather 2 is as perfect as they come. Coppola had a vision and was able to put all that together with Godfather and Godfather 2. You get in Godfather 2 the continuation of where Michael Corleone is in his reign as the boss, but you also get the early years of how Vito Corleone, the Brando character, came into power, which is played by Robert De Niro. And an interesting tidbit is De Niro actually tested for Sonny, which eventually James Caan got in the original Godfather. And they talk about this in the making of The Godfather, that, De Niro was so electrifying and so good, but when they thought of Sonny, he just wasn't the right personality for that. But they remembered that test. So when they went to cast the young Vito for Godfather 2, De Niro was perfect for that. And people always say, well, he's Robert De Niro. But you have to remember, in 1972, when he tested for Godfather, he wasn't Robert De Niro. He could have been John Smith, right? He was just a new actor trying to make his way. Thus, the reason he had to test for it, And I always tell my actors, when you're going on audition, you're going on audition to show them you in the situation, right? Rather than trying to get the job. Because there's no way, going back to what we talked about the other day, you can get in the mind of the people watching for what they want. right? Either you're right for the part or you're wrong for the part. There's no in between. So if I walk in the room and I do me and I'm right, I'm going to get hired. If I'm wrong, I'm not going to get hired. It's pretty simple, right? And that's what kind of what De Niro did. You know, he went in the audition, did him. You know, they loved it. It just wasn't right for Sonny. So James Caan got the role. But then they remembered him, and this is why you have to do you, so they remember you. You may not be right today, but you may be right tomorrow. So they'll remember you. So De Niro did his thing. They remembered him. And then, of course, he gets hired in Godfather 2 as the young Vito Corleone. And I know I keep saying this in a lot of the episodes, but the rest is history. So that's a fun tidbit. And then, you know, I didn't talk about Robert Duvall when I was talking about The Godfather. I mean, he has a good part in The Godfather, but he has a huge part in Godfather 2. And, you know, Robert Duvall is another one of those actors who is a purist, right? He is a believer in bringing himself into the situation. He is Tom Hagen in Godfather and Godfather 2. And he is, you know, I have an interview with him where he talks about, you know, getting in the eyes of the other actor and talk, listen, and talk. He really is about interacting with the other actor. And the scenes in Godfather 2 with him and Pacino are just solid, especially the scenes where, you know, they're talking in Italian and it's just so natural. It just seems so real. And, you know, the way that this movie plays out and the things that Michael has to make as a decision and pressing Tom, the Duvall character, into, you know, are you going to go with me on this or are you not? And there's just such a head that comes to the Vito side of the movie, but then also to the Michael side of the movie. And it's pretty amazing. And if you watch some of my earlier episodes when I was talking about the OG versus the sequel, this was number one, Godfather 2, because I personally believe Godfather 2 is as good, if not better, than The Godfather, which is really, really hard to do. These are all great movies, a great year for film. So you could spend, you know, 10 days just watching films from 1974. But for me, my favorite, Godfather 2. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section. We'll see you next week.